let's take a look at Seven Ages. Now, unfortunately, I can't give you the kind of glossy intro that I give to a game that I've played a few times. This is going to be a first play, and we're going to pretty much spend this trying to work our way through the rules here. And I know a lot of people hate that. I can't blame you. I would find it useless, but it gives me another chance to look at the rules. I've read them a couple of times. I read them this time, and still kind of don't feel like I quite understand, but I think I got a gist of it. And then I ran across, I've got this folder that came in my used copy of it. Oh, geez, there's I don't know, about 10 pages of errata and clarifications, which, you know, if the rules had been written better to begin with, and they're written very, very poorly, maybe wouldn't have been needed. I'm going to try to go without them because I've been dragging my feet about this just because I don't really understand what's going on, but if I don't catch the errata, and to tell you the truth, reading the rules, I didn't feel like errata is going to help it. I feel like what's needed is a rewrite of these fuckers. All right. So why am I doing this game? Why was it exciting to me? Well, if you've seen my Europa Universalis and Struggle of Empires, I think it's called. I don't right remember the Martin Wallace thing. I wasn't impressed with it. You'll know that I really like the idea of this kind of broad spanning the world, covering all kinds of history. Now, there is a prior game to this that this is really almost an answer to, and that is, if I can find it, yeah, I got it somewhere. History of the World up there. Unfortunately, I have the second Avalon Hill edition. The first edition was much better, but second edition comes with all kind of stupid plastic, so you can't play it in 7 as easily. I've always had a gripe about History of the World. It felt, it was kind of a fun Euro-ish type game in the sense that it doesn't really connect to what's going on. It felt kind of like a Vinci or something like that. Presumably Small World feels that way. But I always wanted more from it. And obviously the people over at ADG also felt that way. Hey, what if we did this, you know, History of the World type game? And it is very similar. It's got a glory point type system to keep track of how many victory points you gain during the course of the game by what your empires do and stuff like that. What if it were just a little bit more realistic, a little bit more bounded, perhaps, as to what the empires can do, and less bounded by, geez, the guy who's playing yellow is doing well and he's over in China. Let's see if we can get our Romans over to China. Now, this may still have some of those aspects to it, but it may also have some aspects due to the way the victory points are scored that make it not so generic as to what your empires are. We'll see. More importantly, it covers things like technology and stuff in a little bit more depth. And one of the things I was worried about was, hey, there's no sequence of play, but there isn't one in the rules. Well, no, I'm sorry. This is just the menu of actions. Yeah, there still isn't really a sequence of play in this game. So I'm going to have to kind of follow the rules and give them to you straight, and that's never pleasant. All right. So like I said, the goal of the game is to get glory points. And you're going to be gaining these, I guess, every turn. There is some question about how the rules handle that, and we'll get to that. Maybe it's in the clarifications. Who the hell knows? Now, the first thing that you do in the game is you deal out a bunch of these cards, and I guess you shuffle them all together to each player. And these cards have a number of factors on them. They have a number up here, which I think is the age. No, that can't be that. All right, let's see. That's the card's value, its trade number. But cards also have a number, which I think is what determines, no, it's the value. Okay, so everybody's going to take one of their cards, and presumably the higher value cards are going to be more useful in a lot of ways. So, for example, the Arabs are more important than, say, the Normans, for whatever reason. Anyway, everybody's going to play one of these face down as their bid for whether they want to go first or not. And the guy who plays the highest one gets to go first. If people tie for the highest, then they have the option, it appears to be, no, they have the requirement to play another card face down and add to their bid. So there's kind of a risk in trying to bid high in that and guarantee going first, to which there are some apparent advantages. But coming in second doesn't seem to give you any advantage, because after you determine who comes in first, the second player will be the guy to his left, or when I play, to his right. But we'll worry about that a little later. And then there's a turn marker that player gets to indicate that they are the first player for that turn. Now, each player at that point gets to select a double color bag. Basically, they're going to be, like in History of the World, there are going to be colors for the different empires. Well, some of the bags have 2 colors associated in them, while some of them only will have 1, or some of the sets. The ones with 2 colors that are similar colors, for example, this green and light green, I guess mean 2 different empires that you get to use those counter mixes for. The counter mixes for all the different empires are different. Perhaps there's some information on just how they're different. There seems to be a compendium back here, which I don't have a copy of. I have some play aids, etc. But that seems like one of the most useful pieces of information, at least every now and then. And I don't think I have a copy of that. All right. Then when you play your game, what you're going to be doing is, I should spill out some pieces. Usually I set up a game before I play it. You have these action markers. What do they look like on the back? Well, I don't know, because I can't find one. And I don't want to cut the video. There's an action marker. All right, I wonder what it looks like on the back. Let's flip it over, and it says trade in progress. So those are going to indicate, I think, most of these different options. Now, each of your currently existing empires you'll have a face-up card for. You put an action marker face down on it, so nobody knows what action that empire is taking. And you only have one of each of these actions, and you have a wild card which can replace any of them, but at some cost. Well, that can duplicate any of them at some cost. Okay. Now, if you do not have your maximum number of empires for the number of players, and we don't know that trivially, you're allowed to play an action to the side. That's particularly useful because there's a start empire action, which only makes sense if you play it to the side. Now, maybe I can find out what those maximum number of empires are. No, not easily. I'm sure it's covered somewhere because people were able to play it under those rules, under these rules, but I don't see it right off the bat. That number of empires is based on the number of players that are in the game. And again, damned if I know. I could look through here and try to look through this errata, which is just about as useful as trying to look through other things. Or I could look through these, which don't seem to give me a lot of information either. Okay. Well, there is some maximum and we don't know what it is. Maybe we'll find out by the time we get through the rules. I don't remember whether or not I found this. Oh, wait. Hold on. Here it is. Okay. See, I mean, the rules just aren't set up in a way. They're not numerically linked. It's funny because World in Flames isn't bad like this. And this is from the same designer. But it's like he tried to make the game easier to deal with by making the rules much, much more hideous. But at least there are no scary numbers on every rule. So anyway, the maximum number is 7 in 2 players. And it goes down to by 1 until you get to 5 or more players, where the maximum number is 3. Now I'll be playing probably a full 7 players just to try to get the maximal experience out of this in my one little play. Okay, so if you have under that maximum, you're allowed to play an action marker next to your other empires, and it can be really, for effect, one of 2 things. It can either be a start empire or a destiny. Destiny allows you to screw around with your cards. Anything else doesn't make sense. They're really linked to an empire. All right, let's look at what each of these does. Now, at the beginning of the game, you're only going to get to place 1 action marker. And you have to choose whether it's a start empire or a destiny. If it's a start empire, then you're eligible to start an empire only at certain times in the game. It's based on the age of the empire. So this one could only be started in ages 3 through 7. But unlike History of the World, the starting age isn't age 1 guaranteed. There's an option that allows for that. But the base game says the starting age is based on what other empires are out there. So you can only place it if your age range fits the most advanced empire's age in the game. Sorry, there's a progress track here, which is going to cover where the ages are. Now, where do those ages change? I think they're on each layer. Again. Okay. At that point, you select a color that you want to use for that empire, assuming you have a guarantee on the colors that you picked in your first color bag, though. So you could use those, or I guess you could use a different color, but these tend to be rich and valuable or something. Okay, so if there are no empires on the map at the time of the game, you can play an empire card from any age. Now, the first guy who goes in the game then gets to decide when the game starts, essentially, in terms of an empire starting. And let's see. Its progress marker will be starting on the leftmost space of that age. I guess if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ages, they'll start in this column, or in this first column. That means you could make the game very short right at the beginning by playing, I don't know, this is an age 3 empire, but I mean, there may be some things that that their earliest age is age 7. You have to start at the earliest age of the empire if you're starting with no one on the map. And then you'll have a list of starting areas, or area, where your empire starts. So for example, this says Medina, and then it gives you an N6, which gives you a letter combination, or Medina, that'll help you find it. Okay. Then you're going to start with an amount of money, which is listed also on the card. For example, this gives you 20 bucks. How do you record that money? I don't know. There is a money counter. I assume it goes on the glory track or something. No, it goes on the money track. Well, there isn't a money track, so that's nice. So I guess it goes on the glory track or something. And then you'll have possibly some named leaders as being available in a particular age. If you start in that age, you get that leader. Now let's see here. We have leaders 2, 3 in age 3. Al-Hassan Muhammad in 3. So I'd get those named leaders if I started in age 3. Now the other number for leaders, I think, is how many leaders my empire can have. But I don't know. You then build units for the end. Seriously, this is what I have to do, is I have to have all the pieces out and try to figure out what it means, because reading the rules did not impart a great deal of idea about how the game goes. It gives you the general flow. You then build your initial units for the empire. This is done exactly like the building units part of a production phase, C2. Okay, well, we'll get to that later. And you can use the ability of an administrator you set up to reduce the cost of his initial units. Okay, well, I guess that's important too. We'll get to that later too, because they didn't bother to give me links in or anything like that. Place any elite markers listed in the special section of the Empire card when you set up your units. So here, Cav costs 3 before age 5. Deserts count in harvest glory and earn 1 income in production. You know, I mean, the cards are written about as clearly as the rules are. So we're going to be deciphering this and probably getting about half of it wrong. Okay, if someone else is in your empire, it might say that you convert things. If you can read these cards. My eyes aren't too good. Surprisingly, it doesn't look like I can convert anything using the Arabs card. Now, this card has other uses on it, and we'll get to those later. But the top part is your empire, I guess. That's something that the rules don't bother to explain either. But I learned that by watching or skimming through Gregor's coverage of the game. Okay. Now what? So that may convert some of the pieces there if it says something about that, but that one doesn't seem to say anything about that. And if there are any other units in your empire start area, you now get to conduct combat against them. So you don't get stopped from existing by someone else being there. If your empire has, unless your empire has a no cities marker, find us. This has a no cities marker. You'll get a level 1 capital in your starting area, and that's a level 5 city. There's a level 1 city. Now, I have a bunch of these. Okay, that's your national capital. There's a bunch of these cities that are not capitals that are over in this pile here. And I'm trying to differentiate between them because these seem different from these. And maybe they are, but they don't seem to be. They don't show a picture of both types, so maybe just some of the images are different or something. All right. Wait, more here. Unless your empire has a no cities symbol for the age, you may also pay to fortify your starting areas. Okay, well, I don't see anything that seems to indicate about what fortification is involved in, but all right, that's yet more rules we put on the stack and hope to understand at some point, right? and then you pay for your units with your money on the track. You place the units in its start area and any named leaders. If your empire has several starting areas, you can distribute them. Navies can only go in coastal areas. Okay. You may also set up any forts listed in your special section. So we'll worry about that. But here I seem to have something. Wait, 2 free maneuver production. Yeah, I don't know what that is. And then any remaining capitals will be placed on the card to show what color you're using for that empire. Immediately after you set up, you'll be allowed to carry out any special actions. So this says 2 free, 1 elite marker and 2 in age 3, 1 elite marker and 2 free maneuver after setup. So I would get 2 free maneuver actions over here when I first start this empire, and that's, you know, their bonus there. Okay. Other special effects will apply only as long as specified. All right. The next option you can take is production. If you choose production, you get income for each area you control. You add the income you earn on your track. Each undisordered area will produce income, which is listed on the terrain effects chart on the map. We got that here. We got a number of different things, the name, different movement costs for the areas, a defense bonus, and then, woo, there's income. And you'll see things like desert don't have any, but they have a little marker there. 3 do not count during harvest glory. Okay. We'll worry about that later. This is going to take forever. Each undisordered area will produce that money plus the value of a city in the area. I assume it's number. And if it's a disordered area, it'll earn no income whatsoever. Wheat is only added to the value of a non-fertile area when the empire is 5, 6, or 7. Okay, wheat appears to be something that shows up on the board. And we look here, you only gain income from non-fertile areas, wheat, with ages 5 or more. And you'll notice wheat gives +2 to the income. So, what makes something fertile? It's a particular terrain type, which means Egypt and Ukraine are fertile, but the Appalachia, the Midwest is not. The Great Plains is, however. We'll kind of get used to this. The symbols on the map as we go, I guess. Oil is only added to an area when the empire is in age 7. And you'll see oil produces +4 income where you find it. And some cards will give you income in other ways. If your empire doesn't have a capital, you only get half the income. Now we come to an interesting place. I guess this is part of production, yeah. So you don't have to pay maintenance for your units unless you choose to produce. And if you do, you have to pay $1 for each unit on the map. You must do so if you can. Artifact cities and fortifications and leaders don't cost anything. Barbarian empires who have no cities for the age they're in. So for example, this says no cities less than 4. So any age before 4, I wouldn't have cities. So I wouldn't have to pay maintenance. Of course, my income's going to be lower during that period too. And then I return any units the empire can't maintain. Then I can buy new units. I can only build units available at the progress level or earlier. You look for the circled progress level on the unit or looking at the unit's picture on the progress track, and we have the different types of units specified on here as to when you can start building them. I don't think things age out. I saw things about spearmen facing tanks and such. The cost of the units is listed on the map under the progress chart, and you'll have that here. So here it says infantry, spears cost 1, swords cost 12, etc. Alright, and oh wait, maybe not. Maybe infantry costs 2. Ah yes, this is the era in which they're in. So infantry always costs 2, even if they're motorized infantry. Ships always cost 5. Fortifying an area always costs 5. And I do know there's fortify markers and other aspects here. Okay. You can only build naval and coastal and sea areas that the Empire controls. So you can actually build them out at sea. You can only place as many units in an area as the value of the city in the area. So you can build 5 units in a level 5 city. You can place 1 unit in any area without a city, though. You can fortify any number of land areas in a production action. It costs 5 each. Each area can only have 1 fort. Okay. Barbarians can't build forts. Some empires have prevention of certain types of units that they can't build until the empire has traded with an empire that doesn't have that restriction. An empire can only build elephants that have been added to the force pool. If an empire of progress 10 or more takes control of an area with an elephant, you add the elephant to the force pool, even if it means taking it from another empire. Add a random unnamed elephant to the empire's force pool if it's at progress level 10 or more and wins a trade with an empire that controls an elephant area. If an elephant dies or isn't maintained, remove it from its empire's force pool, unless the empire controls that elephant's area. How do I know which elephant has got which area? I hope that they're marked for that, because otherwise that doesn't make sense. Let's look. So one question is, where are these elephant markers? I've got a bunch of leaders here and a bunch of leaders here. These are the elephant markers, and yes, they are largely named as to a location. This one's not, but some of them are. Okay. So I guess if you have an unnamed one, something happens there. Let's keep looking at that. Add a random unnamed elephant to the Empire's force pool if it wins a trade. Yeah, okay. So it doesn't actually, it's not based on the elephant area. It's based on having traded with someone with elephants. So now you kind of have them, but not in the same way. But if you hold on to the elephant's area, you get it back in your force pool and you can rebuild it. All elephants leave the game immediately once an empire enters area zone age 7. You can only build nukes or Star Wars if they're available in the common force pool. During civilized actions, you're allowed to remove disordered, and during harvest glory, you can buy glory, and that'll be explained in those particular actions. Okay. Trading. You pick an empire owned by another player, and for your empire to trade with. That other empire has to be within range of your empire. Huh? What's in range? Okay, well, they explain that down here eventually. If there's a choice, you must choose an empire that hasn't traded so far this turn. If there are no empires in range, you trade against the random deck. An empire is in range if the smallest number of areas between you, counting the closest, is less than or equal to the age your empire is in. So if you're at age 1, you have to be next to each other. Oh no. Counting their closest area. So this seems weird. If one of your areas is adjacent, there's one area between them. Yeah, bad wording. Rules are full of it, though. You can't count through ocean sea areas until you reach, or into ocean areas until you reach age 4. You can't count through areas controlled by another empire unless that player gives permission. That player can demand cards and or money from your empire, which must be supplied if you accept. Empires can be in different ages, so one empire could be in range to trade where the other wouldn't be and would just be subjected to trade. When you trade, you take a card from your hand and put it face down. If you don't have any cards, you take a random top card from the deck. Your card's value is added to the trade number on your empire's card. There it is. +1, +2 in ages 3 and 4. Okay. And you're trying to get the higher total to win the trade. Otherwise, you play against the top card on the deck without modifying it if you have no one to trade with. That sounds like an advantage. Maybe. If you win the trade, you get to increase your progress by a level. You may choose to increase it a second level if you chose the trade action and... well, that sounds pretty easy. And you can increase it another level if you traded with an empire that started on a higher progress level. So here's the thing. Progress probably doesn't terribly help someone's trade ability. So you may want to pick on people who have a lower trade ability and higher progress, but maybe the deck's arranged in such a way that that's not possible. The notes seem to indicate that this is a hard thing to ever have happen. Okay. So, what happens if you lose the trade? Well, we seem to have missed something there. If your empire trades with an empire that also chose trade in progress, the trade will complete both empires' trade in progress actions. So the other guy kind of doesn't get a turn then. But I'm looking for something else because you get a card when you at least lose a trade. Here. Both trading empires keep the card their opponent or the deck played, and you discard the card you played if you traded with the deck. So, if you get beat by somebody who played a higher value card than you, at least you get a higher valued card out of it, which could be of some use. All right, maneuver. Maneuver is going to allow you to move your pieces and fight. Again, another option in the ordering. Each unit can move from an area to area each time it takes a maneuver action. Each area it enters has to be adjacent, and you're going to have a movement allowance listed on your units. Let's see if we can find that. There tends to be a good breakdown here. Progress level, support value, maneuver allowance is over here. And then up here is frontline value, whatever that means. Unlimited sounds like a lot, and that's what the elephants have. Okay. Leaders have to accompany a unit for their entire move. To move, movement is going to cost based on the terrain and the territory from your movement allowance. Naval units can transport a land or aircraft unit plus any number of leaders. The naval unit and the unit it transports must start the maneuver in the same area and move together. This uses the naval unit's movement allowance and movement restrictions. It must end in a coastal land area. It sounds to me like the aircraft unit or land unit being transferred can still take an action afterwards. Infantry, cav, and missile can only move onto land areas. Land units must stop moving when they enter an area containing a unit from another empire, unless the moving empire already has twice as many units covering that move. And naval units can only enter ocean, sea, and coastal areas. They can move through a sea or ocean area containing another empire's units if they already have twice as many units there, or if they don't end their move in any area controlled by that empire. So they can't like do an invasion. So if there's an English fleet here in the North Sea, you can't sail through that and land in England unless you get the 2 times modifier there. You can't move them across land, except at the Suez and Panama canals, which seem to always be assumed to exist. I guess you can portage through them. You might make an argument, you certainly could make an argument that you could portage through the Greeks, but you see the 2 Mediterraneans are next to each other, the Eastern and Central. Star Wars units can move to any area on the map, ignoring other enemies' empires' units. Nukes can also go to any other type of area and ignore other empires' units, except they can never enter an area containing another empire's Star Wars. Other aircraft units must stop moving when they enter an area containing an aircraft unit from another empire, unless the moving empire already has twice as many aircraft units as the other empire. Aircraft can only end their movement in sea or ocean, other than Star Wars, if they also contain one of the Empire's non-aircraft units or is adjacent to such an area. So you can patrol the seas and oceans as long as you control the area next to it and contain units in it. Okay, removing a disorder from an area. Your Empire has to finish its maneuver actions with enough units in the disordered area. This is going to be 1 unit plus the defender's terrain modifier from the terrain effects chart. So you might get our defensive modifier. Plus the value of any city in the area. But that gets reduced to 0, the city value, if there's a non-archer missile unit, artillery or such not. An Empire can remove more than 1 disorder in the same movement action. I seem to remember removing disorder had a cost, but that's during Civilize. If units cross a river or invaded or crossed a crossing arrow, they would need even more units to remove the disorder this turn because of the additional defense modifier there. If one of the units was a non-archer missile unit, the Mongols. So see, here's something weird. You have an example printed in italics, and then we go to what looks like rules, but it's actually just part of the example. And that's just bad habits in rules writing. I gotta plug in. If you haven't figured it out by now, if you just want, some sort of vague idea of the game, this is not the way to do it. I'm trying to avoid having to cut my video, although I think we're going to end up going over. There aren't all that many rules, though. It's just, you really have to kind of piece through them because they don't make all that much sense either. Okay, when you want to do conflict, the way this is going to happen is each player takes his units out of the space and is going to secretly commit some of them in order to actually fight. He must pick at least one of them. And if he has a tactician in the area, which I assume is a kind of leader, but I don't know, they can also assign that. And now you also are allowed to play event cards to affect the combat. You turn over all the event cards that you're playing, and event cards are going to be this bottom part, I guess. Like, oi, it's my go. Allows you to steal the turn marker during the turn. So now you turn over all the cards. What the hell? So you're going to draw a random card from the deck to give you your conflict value, I guess. Although I don't remember that being explained anywhere yet. That's okay. Ah, yeah, here it is. So you draw a card, look at it, place it face down, and then you make your commitment choice. So you get to see the value of the card that you're fighting with. You don't get to pick it from your own hand, though. You get to add the value of half the units that you committed's frontline value and the support value of additional units. Okay, what's up with that? Let me use this as a bookmark because we have to keep looking back here. So what do we have? We have a support value up here, and a frontline value is going to be this number over here. So half your units get to use their frontline value, the other half get to use their support value. Any elite markers your empire has can give you a +1 up to +3 total. Every difference in age that you have gives you a +1 for your empire. Ages, remember, are these long things. It's not just a couple of little tech boxes. Then you get to add the best frontline and support value used by units you committed this round for each disorder marker your opponent's force has acquired. So, in addition to the points that you got from committing, you get to commit some of them twice, essentially, if the opponent has disorder markers. You'll see how you get disordered markers. Well, I'll tell you how you get disordered markers. You get disordered markers by committing all your troops. Each time you do that, you'll pick up a disorder marker. And then the defender gets the terrain modifier for the area, and +2 for fortifications, and plus any city value. If you commit elephants, the frontline value of all chariots, light horse, and horse archers is reduced to 0. Okay. I'm still kind of worried about elephants who flip over and have an unlimited frontline value. But there is a -9 glory marker there. Oh, that's not an elephant. That's like a rocket. That's a nuke. Okay, no wonder. I guess they're on the back of the elephants. Okay. Terrain modifiers are cumulative. So if you had to, say, cross a river, the defender would get bonuses there. Terrain modifiers are based on the age of the defender, not the attacker. Huh? Well, I'm assuming some of these have effects at different ages. So, for example, river says 6 +1 if any units of this. No, that doesn't seem to be it. All right, so yeah, I don't know. No idea. I was wondering about that when I read it before. Still got no clue. Hey, maybe we can look this up in here because this is something that I truly wonder about. Yeah, I'm not seeing any mention of that. I think this is mainly clarifications, but the rules are truly written so badly that that may be necessary to make sense out of them. I don't feel like doing that, though, because this pissed me off enough having read through it a couple of times. It's like reading a Phil Eklund rule book. Okay. Okay, so whoever has the lower total there loses all the units that they committed and any leaders. The empire with the higher total loses nothing. But both people who committed, and if both sides, if they tie, they both lose all their units. Unless someone committed a tactician, in which case they don't lose anything in a tie. All right, all those committed units get slid to the side. And then you go forward with your uncommitted units. If you lose an elephant during your battle, all the remaining units in that side have to retreat. And that's the elephant rampage or whatever. If you have no remaining uncommitted units, your committed units become uncommitted again, but you get a disordered marker. And then we have some things you can use in nuke. If your only uncommitted unit in a combat is a nuke, you can destroy it before the conflict round. You would then gain a disordered marker for having committed all your units, and they would become uncommitted again. If nuke and Star Wars are committed in the same round, the nuke is destroyed before working out the conflict value. If you commit a nuke, you lose 5 glory. You can choose to retreat before drawing cards at the start of the round if the other empire has any disorder markers. If you have a tactician in the area, you can retreat if either side, including yours, has a disorder marker. If both sides are allowed to retreat, the active player has to choose first, and units can only retreat into an adjacent area their empire controls, and only if it doesn't contain a unit from another empire. Units can only retreat to an area they could enter during movement. Retreating units that have nowhere to go will just die. If you lose a conflict, which I assume is either destroyed or retreat, that's not defined anywhere, you lose an elite marker, if you have one. If both sides lose all their units in an area, the area becomes neutral. Otherwise, it's controlled by whichever side stays. If control changes, any artifacts and fortifications there are reduced, and reduce any city there by 1 level. Capitals turn into ordinary cities. If an empire loses a capital city in the conflict, that empire's saved money is lost, and half the amount goes to the new owner. And if an empire without a capital loses a leader in conflict, then it also loses. All that empire's saved money is lost, and half that amount is transferred as if a capital had been transferred. The active player keeps fighting conflicts until they're all resolved, and you're never allowed to look at the other player's units. Okay, I'm cutting this here so that I'm at a kind of logical place, and then I'm going to take a break, and I'll come back with the Destiny action. And I'm sorry, but this is just how I have to do.